Meanwhile, the legal battle over President Trump's proposed travel ban continues. The ban, which is set to go into effect later this week, will enforce the new restrictions unveiled by the administration last month. 8 countries will be affected: Libya, Iran, Syria, Somalia, and Yemen, in addition to Chad, North Korea, and Venezuela. A federal judge in Maryland will hold a hearing on 3 lawsuits today over the president's most recent version of the travel ban. Joining me now from Washington is CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid. Paula, break down the latest set of cases that will be heard today.
Today, the ACLU and other advocacy groups are once again trying to block the president's latest iteration of his travel ban. Now, as you said, it's a collection of lawsuits brought on behalf of various plaintiffs, but most of them are Muslims living here in the United States trying to get visas for their loved ones, either husbands, fiancés, or children trying to come here to the United States from one of these Muslim nations. Now, the big question for the judge is whether this judge will agree to temporarily block this policy before it goes into effect in 2 days.
So that's the big question, Paula, but what are we expecting to get out of this hearing?
So we're going to hear arguments from both sides. We've been through this with each of the travel bans. I've been in court to hear these arguments. I know them well. For example, the ACLU will argue that this is, in fact, a Muslim ban that was promised on the campaign trail. They will try to convince this judge that there is a likelihood that this is unconstitutional, that not only is it trying to do something that only Congress can do, but also that this discriminates based on religion. But the Trump administration will argue that all of these travel bans, and especially this third one, this is squarely within the president's national security power, that he is not trying to discriminate against Muslims, that he is only trying to protect the country's national security. And Stephanie, this time they're going to be able to point to the addition of North Korea and Venezuela, the addition of those countries, to try to again bolster this argument that this is not a Muslim ban.
Yeah, that's what makes this so interesting. Where would the case go next?
Well, this is the judge really gives them their best shot of potentially getting this blocked because, of course, this is the same judge that had blocked previous travel bans. But it remains to be seen. If this judge does once again block this travel ban, it's all but guaranteed the Trump administration will appeal, and it'll be Groundhog Day. We'll go to the appeals court. We'll potentially go to the Supreme Court. But if the judge decides not to block this policy, the ACLU and these other advocacy groups, they're really going to have to reassess their strategy because, again, this judge represents one of their best hopes for getting this particular version of the travel ban blocked. And a lot of legal experts say they have a real uphill battle even to try to get this travel ban 3.0 blocked.
Now, you bring up that the previous version of the travel ban went up to the Supreme Court, but then the Supreme Court scrapped oral arguments on that case from its docket after this new version came out, from what I understand. Would you say that was a victory for the Trump administration?
It's hard to really call the first 2 travel bans a victory because they were both blocked. They were instantly tied up in litigation. The first rollout of that first travel ban was very chaotic, and that really undermined a lot of their legal cases going forward. But of course, a lot of people thought that the Trump administration stood a decent shot of winning at the Supreme Court, even though certain appeals districts, certain circuits were giving them sort of a rough go of it, trying to get to the Supreme Court and blocking the policy. But really the best case scenario for the administration here was to sort of take the nod from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave them time to hash out a third iteration of this policy, and that's what they did here. So hard to describe it as a victory, but at this point it's really the best outcome for the Trump administration given the circumstances.
Could this iteration of the travel ban make its way back up to the nation's high court?
It's certainly possible. There are several outstanding challenges against this version of the travel ban, but most legal experts I've talked to say it's going to be very difficult, first of all, to get this all the way to the Supreme Court. And if they did, the Trump administration faces an even better chance of prevailing, of winning at the Supreme Court. But again, the question of whether or not it'll get to the Supreme Court, it really hinges on whether or not this addition of North Korea and Venezuela, does that really change things? Is there still this question of whether or not this mainly discriminates against Muslims? We'll see what the judge decides within the next 48 hours, and then we'll know whether or not we're on our way to the Supreme Court.
All right, Paula Reid for us in Washington. Paula, thank you.